Hello, this is John Lira, and in this demo what I want to do is review and complete what we have been building in terms of the data model, but also show you the physical tables that we have been creating, how Oracle generates those. It's a little bit advanced. Most configurators don't need to know that much detail about the underlying tables, but I think it's a good idea for you to be aware of it. Let's begin with what we have done. Let me minimize the hub. I'm already in the hub, and let me bring up this document that I've been showing during every module. So this is the ER diagram that we started out, customer and address. We had to add more based objects to include what's the kinds of relationships that we want, where a customer has more than one relationship, more than one address. So you'll see in the data model that in fact I had to add another based object and another based object to deal with addresses and the forthcoming many relationships. Let me minimize that for a moment because we'll get to that again. And what I want to do is show you the data process flow and just orient you in terms of where we are. We have finished the based object, so we are on the right hand side, and let me just use a fatter ballpoint pen. So we have been creating the target data model, and at this point we have customer and address plus a few more based objects that I will show you. We created the landing tables because remember we have two sources, the CRM and the sales. So we have created those sources, and we have created the landing tables and the appropriate tables that will eventually hold that data from the sources. And I have defined the various staging tables, only the tables. We have not executed, we have not completed a lot of other smaller details like relationships and lookups, but we have defined the based objects, the staging table objects, and the landing table objects. Now, again, I'll repeat what I said earlier. There's two phases. There's the configuration phase, and then there is the job execution phase. Job execution phase means that we are executing our configuration, i.e. our design. Whatever staging tables I have, I want to run it and actually populate the tables. If I run the load process, I want to move data from the staging to the based objects. So we have not executed anything just yet. We've only been configuring. So I've been focusing on the configuration aspects of it only. So let me go into the hub, minimize this, and in the hub, let me begin by looking at the schema viewer. And this is a review of what we have done in the preceding demos. So notice that what we have is 4 entities, a customer based object, and you can see the various columns. Notice the system column row ID object, which is the primary key of that object. And address based object, notice it has address line 1, city, state. But we also realize, based on the requirements, that a customer can have more than one address. For example, a customer can have a bill to or a ship to address. And so in order to accommodate that, we have to create an address type based object. They will be the link between address and address type, so that we know if an address is a shipping address, if it is a bill to address, etc. So we're going to maintain the type of addresses in the address type. Hence, there's a code and a description for this. So we're done with our data model, customers and addresses. Now, in the lecture, you would have heard me say that the way that your target data model ultimately ends up is influenced by how the ER diagram is developed, and vice versa. So in other words, it's sort of spiral. Sometimes I may realize that I did not bring all the landing data, and I did not transform all the data, and I'm missing something in the based objects. The based objects is the target data model. So sometimes I realize that I have to go back, modify the landing tables, the staging tables, or the based objects. So here's my first draft, 4 entities. I need the relationships, which we'll do in a forthcoming demo. And right now I just want to review what I have. So 4 based objects. Here is customer. Let me get a right lock. Remember that you have to get a right lock in order to edit. So here is customer, and we select it and we go to columns, full name, first name, middle, and you can read the rest yourselves. We've been doing this in various demos. Don't forget data analysis. We know that this data is going to come from the staging tables. The staging tables get the data from the landing tables, and the landing gets the data inserted into them, and which we're going to have to do. We're going to have to get landing data, and I'll have more to say in a moment. So here's the customer. We have the various staging tables, STG CRM customer, the sales for customer, and then we have the address. We have the columns. Notice the address along with its row ID object, and notice the last column here, customer row ID. This is the foreign key and address that will link it to the primary key in customer. We haven't done relationships, but we're heading there. Notice already that if I go to relationships, I have some. But don't worry, I'll come back and finish this in a subsequent demo. So we have staging tables, 3 of them. We've already discussed why, so this is just summary. Data that comes from the CRM address and data that comes from the sales system that provides the bill and ship to address. So at this moment, I have my staging tables. Now I have an address type based object. And what does it have? An address type code, whether it's a billing or ship to, or whatever other codes we need to keep track of, and a description. And because of that, I need to create an address type dummy table, which is an intersection table. This is the one. Notice the columns. It's basically the intersection table. They will link address to the address type so that we know if an address is one of the types, whether it's a bill to or ship to address. So the only thing we're missing are the relationships, but we're going to come back to that later on. Now, what about the landing tables? Notice the landing tables. I have 4. CRM address, CRM customer address, and sales. So I have sales customer because we will have sales data for customer. I have CRM customer because we're also getting customer contact data. Let me just look at the column so you can see. Notice full name. So we're getting contact data from CRM customer. So customer data, customer contact data is coming from the CRM system and from the sales. Address is coming from the CRM data and from the customer address. So you can see, all right, there's a CRM ID and address ID. So there goes my landing table. Let me quickly go to Oracle and remember the naming conventions we have been using. C_base object name, C_STG, C_LDG. If we have followed those conventions, then when we go to Oracle, which I have it open, I'm going to go to my ORS, which is TRN Lab. That's where we have been working on. And you're going to see the various metadata tables that have been created by MDM. Here is the C_address. That is equivalent to the underlying table for the address-based object. I'll come back in a moment. Remember, we have one called also address type. There goes C_address type. And we also have another one. Remember the 4 that we have? I'm moving up now. Here's the address type. So that's a third. And we're missing customer. So where is it? Here it is, customer. And look at all the system columns plus our data that we care about. Okay? So these are, in fact, the physical tables that our based object gets translated into at the Oracle table structure. Let me focus on customer. Notice I have been saying that it's a very complex object. It's not just the entity. It is also the based object will eventually, the based object initially will have all of our records and eventually have the best version of the truth. Therefore, as we provide matching and merging, we have the support tables that make up a based object. So right now, customer has an EMI table, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and I gave up counting. Okay, so notice it has anywhere between 12 and 13 tables. Now, It's not important for us to know every table, but it is important to know some of them. So for example, the cross-reference. A based object cross-reference table holds all the records that were brought into the based object, and as the records are matched and merged and consolidated in the based object, for in this example, customer, all the original records are in the cross-reference. So the customer based object will have the golden record, the best version of the truth, the single view of the records, but the cross-reference will have all of them. So if I had 14 Joe Smiths, the based object, based on our matching and rules, will end up with one Joe Smith, but all 14 records will end up in the cross-reference. And cross-reference will serve to provide data lineage. We'll be able to trace every record back to the staging, back to the original source. Now, you'll see that there's other tables like the history table. If we enable history, then we're going to provide logging. And throughout the demos, I'll mention some more tables. I'm not going to mention all of them, but just some more tables so you can see there. For example, the matching, etc. Okay? But in my opinion, right now, the most important is the tables are that every based object has a cross-reference table. Later on, I'm going to say that it's important to know that it has a match rule or a history. Okay, so that's a little background. So that was customer. You can do the same analysis for address. You can see the tables. Okay, and all the other based objects. Now, I'm going to go find the staging tables. Notice that we use the convention C_STG. Our display name was STG, but it gets translated to C. So just scrolling down inside the ORS, I should find the tables that we created. By the way, what's all those other tables that are there? All that is system information, system metadata information in our ORS that we are not supposed to touch. If we want, we can access and read, but never modify. And for the most part, a lot of these will be meaningless to us. Typically, tech support will want you to look at these and may suggest to do something to them. But here are the STG. Okay, notice I have an STG CRM address type, STG CRM address, STG. So notice all the staging tables that we have created. Here they go. Remember that the staging table defines the structure of the staging table, which is an attribute of the based object, and data from the landing will be transformed and stored in the staging table when we define mappings and when we execute the stage job. And I'll come back to our data flow diagram and show you what I'm talking about. And lastly, the LDG tables. So remember our landing tables? We have 1, 2, 3, and 4. Address data, customer data, coming from both the sales and the CRM system. The question is now, there's no data. Where does data come from? How am I going to get data into here? We got to get data, transactional or master data in here from the transactional data. So where is it going to come from? Well, let me not leave you with too much anxiety. We're going to have to ETL it, write a script to insert it. If you're lucky to have Power Center, go ahead and use that. But it doesn't matter as long as we bring the data in. In my demo, I'm going to simply write insert script to insert the data. And so that concludes some of these table structures. And let me minimize this. And going back to the diagram here of where we are. So we have defined the landing. We have defined the based objects. And I think correctly, later on we may determine that we may have to go back and modify a few things. But it seems pretty good, okay? In the based objects, we need relationships. We'll do that momentarily. And in the staging process, we've defined it. But now, in a forthcoming demo, we're going to have to concentrate on cleansing, which we're going to have to create mappings. Notice we have not executed anything at all, so therefore there is no data. We would like to bring in data to the landing table and then run the staging tables to move data from the landing over to the staging. Now, some people could build the whole model, including matching and merge, and then load data. I would recommend, especially in a test and also a learning environment, not only a development test, but learning, is why not bring data piece by piece? Bring in data, go to the next step, go to the next step, etc., rather than wait and see if it all works magically at the end. So there goes the diagram we've been seeing, and that concludes this demo of our overall summary of what we've done so far. Thank you.